Some battles are not fought with guns, but with silence. And sometimes, the smallest voice becomes the loudest act of defiance. France, 1943. The city of Lyon wakes every morning to the growl of German trucks and sleeps every night to the heavy rhythm of soldiers' boots. Fear hangs in the air like smoke, invisible, but suffocating. Every street corner whispers suspicion. Every window hides a pair of eyes too scared to look for too long. And yet, through that silence, walks a girl. 17-year-old Elise Laurent, quiet, slender, a face too innocent to suspect, and in her hand, a single white lily. People believe it's a keepsake from her mother, but the truth is far more dangerous. The lily is a symbol, a silent mark of the French resistance. The flower of hope. That morning, Elise walks briskly through the fog-covered streets, her school bag hanging loosely from one shoulder. 2 German soldiers guard the corner checkpoint ahead. Their rifles glint in the cold sunlight. She lowers her eyes and walks past them, pretending to be just another schoolgirl. Her pulse races. Every heartbeat feels like it might give her away. A few streets later, she steps into an old bakery, Boulangerie Rue. The bell above the door rings softly. The air smells of bread and wood smoke. Madame Rue, the elderly baker, smiles as she sees her. Bonjour, Elise. The usual loaf. Elise smiles faintly, lowering her voice. Oui, madame, but make it double today. It sounds innocent, but it's a code phrase. It means the message is ready. Madame Rue bends down and takes out a loaf from a hidden compartment under the counter. Inside that bread, wrapped tightly in wax paper, lies a microfilm carrying resistance codes and coordinates. Elise places the loaf gently in her bag, thanks the woman, and walks out, her expression unreadable. Outside, Lyon looks ordinary. But beneath the quiet surface, a war of shadows brews. Soldiers stand by shop doors, watching, listening, smelling fear. The red and black Nazi flag waves above the school building as Elise passes by. Inside her bag lies something that could change the course of the war, and yet, no one would ever guess. She whispers under her breath, just one more day. Just one more safe delivery. For Elise, every day is a test. One wrong look, one slip of the hand, and it's over, not just for her, but for the entire network. But this isn't just a mission for her, it's personal. Her brother, Jean Laurent, was a resistance fighter until a German raid months ago. He vanished that night. Some say he was captured, others say he was shot. Elise refuses to believe either. In her heart, he's still out there, still fighting. At night, she reads his old diary under candlelight. The pages are worn, the ink smudged. One line always makes her stop and stare. If we lose our voices, little sister, then they win. So keep speaking, even in silence. She presses the diary to her chest, her eyes filling with quiet determination. Outside, the wail of air raid sirens echoes through the streets. German patrol lights sweep past her window. She hides the white lily beneath the table, her secret witness, her promise. The next morning, Elise makes her way to an old church courtyard. On the surface, it looks like a charity food drive. But beneath the chatter and movement, whispers flow, coded words, silent nods. It's a resistance meeting. Henry, one of the leaders, looks at her with both pride and worry. Elise, girls your age carry love letters, you carry war. Elise smiles faintly. It's a love letter too, Henry, just written to France. He slips a folded map into her bag. German supply routes near Paris. If this reaches the right hands, we strike next week. Elise nods and leaves without a word. Her face is calm, but her heart pounds like a ticking clock. On her way back, she approaches a German checkpoint. 2 soldiers stand guard, but the one who catches her eye is Captain Muller, tall, sharp-featured, eyes like cold glass. He's known for his suspicion, for finding what others miss. As Elise steps closer, his gaze locks on her. "Where are you going, little girl?" "To school, sir," she replies softly. He nods at her bag. "And the bread?" "For my teacher," she says, forcing a smile. She loves the smell of hope. Muller stares at her for a moment, as if trying to read the truth behind her words. Then, unexpectedly, he smirks. "You speak well for your age. Go on." Elise walks past him, each step heavier than the last. Behind her, Muller's eyes follow. Something about her unsettles him. She's not ordinary, he thinks. By noon, she reaches a small park. A man sits under a statue, pretending to read a newspaper. Elise quietly sits beside him, takes the loaf from her bag, and places it on the bench. A moment later, the man folds his paper, picks up the loaf, and walks away. No words exchanged. No glances shared. Another mission complete. But Elise doesn't feel relief, only an ache. Jean's face flashes before her eyes. She wonders if he's safe, if he's even alive. When she returns home that evening, the sky is dark and heavy with clouds. She opens her door, and something catches her eye, a small folded note slipped under the threshold. Her hands tremble as she picks it up. 2 words are written in hurried ink. Asterisk, he's alive. Asterisk. The paper slips from her fingers as tears fill her eyes. Her brother lives? For the first time in months, she lets herself smile. She walks to her window, lights a candle, and places her white lily beside it. "I won't stop, Jean," she whispers. "Not until France is free." Outside, the boots of German patrols echo down the street, steady and cruel. But inside her little room, a violin melody plays softly from a distant radio, the sound of hope surviving another night. The camera of imagination pulls back slowly from the flickering candlelight, from the small trembling hands of a brave girl, from the white lily glowing against the darkness. Leon sleeps again, wrapped in fear, unaware that a 17-year-old courier just kept its heart beating. They say heroes wear uniforms. But in that year, one hero wore a school dress and carried a flower. The silent courier. The streets of Lyon had grown quieter, but not safer. The silence now was the kind that waited like a breath held too long. After the note that said he's alive, Elise's world had changed. The fear was still there, the danger even greater, but now her steps had a new rhythm, one set by hope. Every morning, she carried her bag with the same calm expression, the same steady pace. To the untrained eye, she was an ordinary schoolgirl. But to the resistance, she was a courier of light, a lifeline between scattered cells. Her face was too young to be suspected, her courage too old to be understood. The next mission came without words. A small ribbon tied to the church fence, that was the signal. It meant there was something to deliver. Elise found a sealed envelope inside the hollow of an old pew. It contained a photograph, a map, and a tiny piece of paper with a date written in red ink. That was all she needed to know. She tucked it deep into the lining of her coat and walked out into the narrow cobbled streets. German patrols were heavier now. Every corner carried the echo of boots, every shadow a threat. The Gestapo had grown restless. Rumors of a young courier spreading resistance messages had reached their ears. At the cafe on Rue de El Arbre, Elise stopped to buy a cup of warm milk, a disguise to make her routine look ordinary. She sat near the window, eyes on the street, pretending to read a book. Across from her, at another table, a soldier stirred his coffee and watched her with idle curiosity. She kept her hands steady, her breathing slow. When the church bells struck 10, she stood up, left a few francs on the table, and walked out, feeling his gaze follow her until she turned the corner. Her next destination was the train yard. The resistance planned to sabotage a German supply train bound for Berlin. The photograph she carried was of the track layout and the time of departure. The map marked the weak spot in the railway line. But the message had to reach the saboteurs outside the city before dusk, or the chance would be lost. Halfway through the route, she sensed something: footsteps behind her, too regular, too deliberate. Her pulse quickened. Without turning, she changed direction, slipping into the side streets of the old quarter, where laundry hung from balconies and children played barefoot on the cobblestones. She walked faster, turning left, then right, weaving through alleys until the footsteps faded. When she finally stopped, she was outside Madame Roux's bakery. The old woman was sweeping the doorstep. Their eyes met. No words were exchanged, just a flicker of warning. Elise stepped inside, pretending to browse, while a German officer passed outside the window. When he was gone, Madame Roux whispered, "They're watching the couriers now. Someone has betrayed us." Elise's stomach twisted. Who? Nobody knows. But they've arrested 3 from Paris last week. Be careful, child. Elise nodded, bought a loaf to keep up the appearance, and left through the back door into the maze of courtyards. Her path took her past the river Rhône, the cold wind biting at her face. She crossed a small bridge where 2 fishermen worked silently, one of them whistling a French folk tune, the pre-arranged signal. She dropped a coin into the water as she passed, another coded message delivered. By afternoon, the gray clouds began to gather. The air smelled of rain and smoke. Elise's boots were muddy, her fingers numb, but she pressed on. At last, she reached the outskirts of Lyon, where a broken windmill stood abandoned, except to those who knew its secret. Inside, 2 men waited, their faces shadowed by dim lantern light. "You came alone?" one asked. "I always do," she said. They checked the envelope, scanned its contents, and nodded. "You've done well, little one." "Is this for the railway?" she asked. "Yes. Tonight. If this works, the Germans will lose half their ammunition route." One of the men hesitated, then handed her a small folded paper. "For you. It came through our northern line." Elise unfolded it with trembling fingers. It was a note written in a familiar hand: Jeans. "I'm safe. Working near the Swiss border. Don't try to find me. Just keep running, little sister. France still breathes because of you. Asterisk." She read it again and again, tears blurring the ink. Jean was alive, not just a rumor this time, but real words, written by him. She pressed the note to her chest. "Merci," she whispered. Outside, thunder rolled. The men extinguished the lamp, and Elise slipped out into the rain. She had to return before curfew. The streets were slick and nearly empty now, but she felt lighter, as if the weight of the world had shifted slightly off her shoulders. As she reached the heart of the city, a sudden beam of light sliced through the rain. A patrol car. "Stop, a voice shouted in German. Her instincts kicked in. She darted into a narrow alley, her shoes splashing through puddles. Behind her, boots thundered against stone. A shot cracked the air. She stumbled but didn't stop. Turning sharply, she squeezed through a wooden gate and hid behind a pile of barrels, her breath shallow. The soldiers passed, their voices fading into the storm. She waited until silence returned, then pulled the lily from her coat pocket, the petals bruised, but still white. Her mother's words echoed in her mind, words she barely remembered, when you're scared, hold on to beauty. It's the one thing they can't take. By the time she reached home, it was past midnight. Her dress was soaked, her shoes torn, but the envelope was gone, safely delivered. She sat by the candle, unwrapping the lily, placing it carefully in a small glass of water. The petals trembled in the flickering light, as if alive. Outside, Captain Muller stood under a street lamp, his trench coat glistening with rain. In his hand, he held a list, names of suspected couriers. One of them was Laurent. His eyes lifted toward the windows across the street. Most were dark, but one faint light still burned. He took a slow breath and walked away. Inside, Elise had no idea how close the danger had come. She only knew that tomorrow would bring another message, another walk through the shadows. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself, as long as the lily blooms, France still breathes. The candle burned lower, the wax melting into silence. Outside, the rain stopped. A fragile calm settled over Leon, the kind that always comes before something breaks. The trap. The morning after the storm, Leon awoke to the echo of boots on cobblestones and the distant rumble of engines. German patrols had doubled overnight. Notices were plastered across the walls, reward for information leading to the capture of resistance couriers. The city felt tighter, smaller, as if the very air had been locked away. Elise walked with her usual calm, but her mind raced beneath the surface. Something was changing. The resistance had gone silent, no signals, no ribbons, no meetings. Even Madame Roux's bakery remained closed, its windows shuttered. That kind of quiet meant one thing: someone had been caught. She clutched her school books close to her chest, eyes scanning the street for any sign of danger. A German truck rolled by, its back filled with prisoners. Faces pale, eyes hollow. Among them, she thought she recognized Henry. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second before the truck turned the corner and vanished. Her stomach turned cold. That night, she waited for a sign, any sign. None came. The city's heartbeat had stopped. She sat by her window, watching the rain slide down the glass, the white lily drooping slightly in its glass of water. She reached out to touch it. "Don't fade," she whispered. The next day, she was intercepted outside the school gates. Two soldiers stood there, and between them Captain Muller. His uniform looked freshly pressed, his boots shining black as mirrors. He smiled faintly. "Mademoiselle Laurent, isn't it?" Elise froze. "Yes, sir." "I need a word," he said softly, gesturing toward the car behind him. "Just a few questions about some missing documents. Nothing serious." Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs obeyed reason, not fear. She nodded and followed. Inside the car, the air smelled of leather and tobacco. Muller sat across from her, expression unreadable. The car began to move, rolling through narrow streets until it stopped outside the German command office near Place Bellecour. They led her into a small room, a desk, two chairs, a single light bulb swaying above them. Muller sat opposite her, hands folded. "You're a smart girl, Elise," he began in a calm tone. "I've seen you walk through checkpoints, always on time, always polite. You never look afraid. That makes me curious." She forced a shaky smile. "Maybe I've just learned to mind my own business." He studied her face for a long time. "Good advice. But you see, sometimes people's business hides something else. Something bigger." He leaned closer. "Tell me, Elise, do you know anyone who calls themselves Henry?" Her blood ran cold. She blinked once, buying herself a second to breathe. "Henry? No, sir. There are many Henrys in France." Muller's lips curved faintly. "Yes. But not many who vanish the same night as a sabotage plan near the railway." He stood up, pacing slowly around her. "We found a message, written in delicate handwriting. A young girl's handwriting." Her heart pounded, but her face didn't flinch. "I don't understand what you mean." He stopped behind her. "I think you do." The silence stretched thin. Then Muller sighed and walked to the window. "You remind me of my sister," he said quietly. "She was about your age when she died in Hamburg, under British bombs. War doesn't care for innocence, Mademoiselle Laurent. It eats it first." Elise looked up. His tone wasn't threatening, but weary, almost human. "Then why feed it?" she asked. He turned to face her, surprised by the question. "Because someone has to survive," he said simply. Moments later, another officer entered and handed him a sealed file. Muller scanned it, his eyes sharpening again. "You may go for now," he said, almost reluctantly. "But understand, Lyon is no longer a safe city for liars." Elise stood slowly, nodded, and left. The soldiers didn't stop her. She could feel Muller's gaze following her as she walked down the hall. Outside, the sunlight was blinding. She breathed in, steadying herself. It wasn't freedom, it was a warning. That night, the resistance signal finally appeared, a chalk mark shaped like a small cross on the corner of her street. It meant an emergency meeting. She followed the sign through alleys until she reached the old wine cellar behind the church. Inside, only two faces greeted her. "They've taken Henry," one whispered. "Half the network's gone." "What do we do?" Elise asked. "We move the remaining files to the countryside. You'll deliver one last message tomorrow. After that, disappear." She took the folded note. It was small, unmarked. Simple. But she knew what it meant. This was the end of the line. Either she succeeded, or none of them would live to try again. The next morning, Lyon felt heavier. German flags dripped from the rain-soaked buildings. Elise walked the familiar route one last time, across the bridge, through the market, past the checkpoint where Muller often stood. But today, he wasn't there. Another soldier waved her through. For a moment, she thought she might make it. Then, halfway down Rue de la République, a voice called behind her, "Stop." She froze. A soldier approached, holding out his hand. "Your bag, mademoiselle." She hesitated only a second before handing it over. He opened it. Books, a loaf of bread, nothing else. He frowned. "Move along." She turned to go, her knees weak with relief. But just as she took a step, another officer appeared, Muller. He looked directly at her, then at the soldier, and said quietly, "Check the loaf." Her breath caught. The soldier tore it open. Nothing. Just soft white bread. Muller's brow furrowed. He looked at her again, searching her eyes for a crack that wasn't there. Strange, he murmured. I could have sworn he waved a hand. Let her go. Elise didn't look back until she turned the corner. Her heart was hammering so loud she could barely hear the world around her. In the distance, church bells rang the signal. The message was safe. The real note had been sewn into her sleeve, untouched. But as she disappeared into the crowd, Muller stood at the end of the street, watching. He had seen the faint bulge in her sleeve just enough to confirm his suspicion. He didn't stop her. Not yet. Back in his office, he poured himself a glass of brandy, staring at her name on the list of suspects. He drew a line under it, not crossing it out, not confirming it, just underlining it once. Let's see how far you can run, little messenger, he said quietly. That night, Elise returned home to find her window slightly open. On the table lay a single white lily, fresh, glistening with raindrops. She hadn't left it there. Her blood chilled. She looked out the window. The street was empty, but she could feel eyes somewhere in the dark. The last message. The night was silent, too silent, the kind of silence that listens back. Elise sat by her window, the white lily still glistening under the candlelight. It wasn't hers. Someone had been inside her home. Her pulse raced, but she didn't move. Fear had become a familiar companion, one she'd learned to control. She reached for the flower, turning it slowly in her hand. Tucked beneath its stem, almost invisible, was a slip of paper. Asterisk, meet at dawn. The bridge. Asterisk. No signature. No mark. But she knew who had sent it. Before dawn, the city was a ghost. Fog wrapped around the rooftops like smoke from dying fires. Elise walked quietly, her shoes barely touching the ground, her bag hanging loosely at her side. The bridge over the Rhone loomed ahead, its arches fading into mist. Standing there, in his gray coat, was Captain Muller. He turned as she approached, his face unreadable. For a long moment, neither spoke. The river beneath them murmured softly, a quiet witness. You knew I'd come, she said finally. I knew you wouldn't run, he replied. You're not built for that. She gave a small, bitter smile. Neither are you. He looked almost amused. You've been clever, Mademoiselle Laurent. Smarter than many of my men. But the city is collapsing around you. The resistance is broken. You're one of the last threads left. Then cut it, she said. Muller sighed, his breath clouding in the cold air. If I wanted to, you'd already be in a cell. I didn't call you here to arrest you. He reached into his coat, pulled out an envelope, and placed it on the railing between them. This came through our channels. It's from Switzerland. Elise's heart skipped. My brother. He didn't answer. She tore the envelope open. Inside was a single photograph, Jean, standing beside a group of men, alive. On the back, a message written in his hand, asterisk, keep the light burning. Asterisk. Her eyes stung. Why are you giving me this? Muller looked away, the morning light catching the lines of exhaustion on his face. Because I'm tired of watching children die for things they don't control. Your brother crossed the border. He's safe. You should be too. Safe, she echoed, her voice trembling. There's no safe left in this world. He didn't argue. The silence between them thickened until it was broken by the distant hum of engines. German trucks were approaching. Muller's expression hardened again. "Go," he said sharply. "Now." Elise hesitated. "If they see me." "I'll handle it," he interrupted. "Just run." For a brief second, their eyes met, enemy and prey, soldier and messenger, both trapped in the same web of duty. Then she turned and vanished into the fog. By midday, the resistance safe house outside Lyon was in flames. Soldiers had found it, burned everything inside. Elise watched from a hillside far away, her fists clenched, smoke blurring her vision. Everything she had carried, every coded message, every plan gone. Only one remained. Inside her coat pocket was the last note Henry had given her before his capture. A single sentence that no one had yet read. The words were meant for Jean. But now, Jean was safe, and she was not. The message had to survive, even if she didn't. She walked for miles through the forest trails, her shoes soaked, her hair tangled with rain. Birds scattered as she moved deeper into the woods, toward the ruins of an old farmhouse that once belonged to her uncle. It was empty now, the perfect hiding place. As she entered, the floorboards creaked. She tore the lining of her sleeve and pulled out the note, smoothing the paper with care. Her fingers traced the words written in fading ink. Asterisk, freedom lives only if someone believes it still exists. Asterisk. She folded it again, placed it inside a small metal box she found near the hearth, and buried it beneath the floor. Then she sat back, exhausted. Outside, thunder rolled once more. The war hadn't ended, but something inside her had shifted from fear to acceptance. She thought of her brother, of the bakery, of the faces that had vanished one by one. She thought of Muller, standing on the bridge, offering her mercy he could never explain. And she thought of the lily, now lying forgotten on her table back in Lyon, a symbol of everything she'd lost and everything she still carried. A faint noise outside broke her thoughts, the snap of a twig. She froze. Through the cracks in the wall, she saw movement, German soldiers sweeping through the forest. Dogs barked in the distance. They were searching. She didn't run this time. Instead, she pulled out her diary, the one Jean had given her years ago. On the last page, she wrote in careful letters. Asterisk, if anyone finds this, we were here. We fought. Not with guns, but with hope. Tell them France still breathes. Asterisk. The sound of boots drew closer. She closed the book, tucked it under her arm, and stood. When the door burst open, she didn't flinch. A soldier shouted in German, ordering her to surrender. She looked him in the eye and said quietly, "You're too late." They dragged her away into the rain. Days later, Lyon awoke to another dawn. The war still raged, but whispers spread of a girl who had carried messages across the occupied zones, who never broke under questioning, who vanished without a trace. The people began leaving white lilies on their windowsills, not in mourning, but in memory. Months passed. When the Allies finally liberated the city, a group of villagers searching through the countryside found the ruined farmhouse. Beneath the floorboards, they uncovered a small metal box. Inside it lay a single note, the one Elise had hidden. The ink had faded, but the words remained clear. Asterisk, freedom lives only if someone believes it still exists. Asterisk. The message spread from village to village, from France to the world. No one knew her name at first,